What's the cringiest thing you've seen a bride and groom do for their wedding? At a classmate's wedding, they were young, maybe like 22, 23. There is apparently a caking tradition in some parts of the country where when they cut the wedding cake, the couple feed each other a bit and smear each other's faces with cake as a joke. The bride had absolutely made 1000% clear to the groom that she did not want to be caked. He did it anyways, and not just a small smear, but full-on smushed the slice in her face. She was stunned initially, then got up, face full of cake, yelled, "You a-hole, I told you not to do that," and then ran to a back area in the reception. The groom tried to follow, but the bridesmaids or mother of the bride stopped him. So he sat at the head table awkwardly while half the wedding party rushed off with the bride. She stayed back there for like an hour. They eventually did let him back there to check on her. We could hear her crying and them arguing. The rest of the reception came to a screeching halt until one of the bride's aunts emerged and directed the servers to clear the tables and put on some music. They got divorced 2 years later. Bride shows up almost 2 hours late to her own wedding, Southern California, in an open field, no water, no shade. She shows up and wants to get married in her yoga outfit. The groom shut it down, and when she refused to change her clothes, the groom decided to leave her looking stupid, and they never got married. Edit. I spoke with my uncle, and it turns out he had speculation that his fiancée was sleeping with her personal trainer. When she showed up in her yoga outfit, it was all he needed to call off the wedding. She ended up married to her personal trainer and divorced again. The groom gave a speech thanking everyone for coming that devolved into the space of about 2 minutes into a straight-up roast of his new brother-in-law. They were friends, and the brother-in-law seemed to take it in good humor, but there's only so much implication of, "I'm for sure going to be effing your sister tonight," that you can take before it becomes really cringy. It didn't help that A, I barely knew anyone there because I was a +1, and B, I was on the table with the elderly relatives from that side of the family who were less than amused. At the reception line after the church wedding ceremony, the bride had a large bottle of her favorite perfume and sprayed each guest with it, female and male, whether they wanted it or not, as they entered the banquet hall. Some guests complained that the smell of perfume was so strong that they lost their appetite and couldn't partake of the banquet. They sang their vows to each other. Neither had a singing voice. Vows were generally batshit crazy, like submissive in the bedroom, and not asking about where she was going. The auto-tune microphones were a terrible idea. Their vow songs shared a chorus, and it was awful, and they expected the guests to sing along with the chorus. The vows singing lasted 20 minutes, pure cringe. The groom sang his vows. I honestly had to stare at the floor in slow breath not to laugh to get through it. My cousin did this. He played the guitar while singing his vows. He doesn't know how to play the guitar or sing. I wasn't a guest. I was working the wedding. The bride got drunk and sat on some other dude's lap for 2 hours and flirted with him while the groom sat by himself at the head table with a defeated look on his face. Invite all their Facebook friends and expect 700 people and like less than 100 show up. Ugh, I knew a couple who didn't specifically invite anyone, just made like a public event on Facebook and somehow assumed people would know when or where it was and show up. They were confused and offended when almost nobody came. Not the groom and bride's fault, but the pastor marrying them talked about his marriage and his kids for 20 minutes. He was obviously going for something of showing what marriage will be like. He was full up, was talking about how his daughter Kelsey learned to walk this way and his other daughter's first words were this and that, and that he and his wife make love throughout the house because that's what you do when in love, etc. Bride and groom had to stand there holding hands for 20 minutes right in front of him as the other 150 of us had to listen about his sex life and his kids. They bought an apple orchard after leaving the city to live a simpler life and really doubled down on the apple theme. Apples everywhere. On the tables, in baskets all around the venue, on the podium where they got married, pictures of apples hanging everywhere, small fake trees with apples tossed under them. The dude marrying them had an apple tie on, apples somehow incorporated into every dish for the reception. The cake was shaped like an apple. It was really effing bizarre. They sold the orchard a couple years later because they had no idea what they were doing. Oh, I have two. One, the bride decided to sing as she walked down the aisle. She was not a particularly talented singer, and she was singing over a Carrie Underwood song so we could all hear the original vocal track. She finished walking about halfway through the song and then stood there and sang the rest of the song at the groom, and all we could do was sit there and watch. 2, different wedding. They began the wedding with the groom playing an out-of-tune guitar and singing to the bride. They were sitting on chairs in front of everyone, legit 400 people, and the bride was clearly uncomfortable, which made everyone else uncomfortable. That wedding also included a foot washing ceremony, and when the bride put her shoes back on, she tripped on her dress and fell flat on her face. They hadn't done the vows yet, and the ceremony stopped for 20 minutes to deal with the nosebleed she gave herself. My cousin and his wife are super religious and maybe the two most awkward people I've ever met. They did one of those fake-out first dances where it starts with a slow song then transitions to a dance number with an upbeat song. Not only is that naturally cringeworthy, the upbeat song was 5 minutes long and they just kept repeating the same moves over and over for what felt like an eternity. There was no alcohol allowed at the wedding, so there was nothing to dull the pain. The groomsmen prepared a skit in which they lost the groom at the reception and proceeded with over-the-top hands on hips. "Hey guys, aren't we forgetting something? Well, where can he possibly be?" Acting like some high school musical. None of the guests were prepared and silently fussed around with their drinks and silverware. When the whole thing ended, they anticipated like a standing ovation, but it went over the heads of everyone. A long voice muttered, "That was kind of weird," as they made their exit quietly. Edit: I guess this blew up to the point I should try to remember some of the skit. It was some of the corniest S I saw. Not sure if some of them were inside jokes to the groomsmen crew. They all entered into the main area together minus the room. One guy had the fakest cartoony voice. "Hey, aren't we missing something? It can't be me because I'm always prepared." Winks and paws for laughs. "What about your bow tie?" "Oh no," produces tie, puts it on, waits for audience reaction. "No wait, it's the groom. Where can he possibly be?" This went on for a bit. I don't remember it all because I was on my phone, not really doing anything but to avoid eye contact every time they said a line and desperately scanned across the audience. In the end, the groom came out through the door when he was cued. I don't think he knew about the skit. Thank God he wasn't there to see it unfold. As for the crowd, who isn't going to clap and whistle when the newlyweds show up at a wedding, so it was all good. Why do I get the feeling that they made that up on the spot to stall for time after actually losing the groom? Friends of friends. Young, uber-Christian, small-town naive girl. Meets married, much older man with 2 kids. Falls in love. He does eventually leave his wife. Doesn't want any custody. Wedding was her own hometown church. His vows were over the top about how he has never felt love before. She is the only woman he ever wanted to marry. He's been so lonely his whole life, etc. He's literally sobbing through it all. Her turn to say her vows and she's standing there saying nothing for at least 3 beats. Then she is handed a microphone and the piano starts playing. She's made up her own song, which are her vows. After the ceremony, we adjourn to the church basement for an alcohol-free reception. I'm somehow roped into serving the groom's cake. It's 2 NASCAR car cakes made with an edible photo draped over the cake shapes and impossible to cut through without mangling the cake, so I have to peel it off. My friend is cutting the bride's cake and it's a full inch or more of fondant on top of plain cake. No frosting. The buffet was potluck from her family. Food you'd expect at a kid's party. Pink punch was the only thing to drink. No dancing because of her religion. Then they left for their honeymoon at the town's only hotel, which was like a Motel 6 level dump in a 2-horse-drawn carriage. Dated a girl in my 20s and went to her friend's wedding in upstate New York. In the middle of the service, the minister's cell phone rang. He answered. It was God. God wanted to talk to the groom. Conversation lasted a couple minutes, then the ceremony continued. Instead of throwing rice or confetti or sprinkles or anything like that, the bride and groom asked their friends to save all their empty jewel pods and throw those as they walked down the aisle. The friends obliged. Edit. I posted a screenshot of a friend's Snapchat from the wedding on r/trashy a while ago. At the beginning of the reception, we all had to stand up and sing the national anthem. To be clear, this was in another country I'd never been to a wedding in before, so I thought, okay, maybe this is just a tradition I've never heard of before. Then I told this to other people, and they were all like, no, that's just really weird. Also, at that wedding, the father of the groom ended his speech with what I'm sure he thought was an amazing joke on how it's easier to build a bridge to Hawaii than to understand what a woman is thinking. It would have been awkward enough had the man not also been standing between his ex and current wife as he was delivering it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, press the like button, and write in the comments what cringe moments at weddings you saw.